if you can all please welcome Tudor, Federica, and Selva. Come on up. First of all, you can tell what outstanding young leaders they are because they already know you want to bring your own fans to events. Before we start our conversation, I would love for each of you very briefly to describe for the audience who you are, what you've been doing, and why it's been so exciting for you to gather with some of the other leaders and peers from across Europe. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much, Mr. President, for having us here, and thanks to all the Obama leaders out there, because it's really nice to get in an audience with you guys. My name is Federica Vinci. I am the Deputy Mayor of Isernia, which is a small town in the south of Italy. The work that I do is basically to try to bring back politics, grassroots politics in very small town in my region and hopefully in the future in my country. The best part of being here with all these amazing leaders has been having the chance to reconnect with people that do our same job, even if in different fields. Sometimes it feels lonely when you are on the ground trying to make change, but reconnecting with all of you has been such a gift because it reminds us why we're here and what our purpose is. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Tudor.
Thank you very much. I'm Tudor, I'm from Romania. I am the executive director of what we call an online digital campaigning organization. We work on multi-issues, ranging from the environment to the rule of law. We have an online community with 1.2 million members. This is the people that receive constantly our updates and are invited to take action whenever is needed. We put pressure on decision makers each time there is a good opportunity. We fundraise from our members, and this is how we manage to actually win campaigns. Sometimes we fundraise for expensive lawsuits. Sometimes we fundraise for ads in newspapers to get our message across. And I chose this work because it's my way of defending democracy, and it's my way to help people, simple people from all walks of life, to have a saying in today's democracy, basically.
Excellent. Selva.
Thank you so much. My name is Selva Mustafi. I'm coming from North Macedonia, and I'm a national grassroots organizer within the biggest Roma national movement in Macedonia named Avaia, which means we are coming. I've been active for 10 years now, from the age of 16, and our movement's purpose is to build power in the communities and articulate Roma's issues on higher national level. And another thing is now that from our movement, we also built another 7 national movements in 7 different countries. And I serve as trainer, trying to build the communities, build the structures, and build power.
Fantastic. All right. So we only have about 40 minutes. I want to start with an open-ended question. Because in my opening remarks, I said that, certainly for my grandparents, my parents, and to some degree for me, when I think about democracy and the tension between democracy and authoritarianism, my reference point is the Cold War. I think about, I was in law school when the Berlin Wall came down. I trying to do the math as to whether you were born when the Berlin Wall came down. I don't think so, right? And so I'm interested when we're here at this Democratic Summit. How do you and your peers think about this issue of democracy in your own countries, here in Europe, worldwide? Is it, do you have a sense of concern and worry that democracy is declining? Do you feel cynical about how existing democracies operate? And obviously, it's hard to generalize for everybody your age. But you're also having a lot of conversations with people who are active and care about issues. So, Frederica, you want to start?
Yeah, so being the deputy mayor of a small town, it means that I get to have lots of meetings with people of my age, but also younger. So 15 years old, 16, 18 years old, boys and girls. And I remember right after that I was elected and then nominated deputy mayor, I'm also in charge of youth policies. So coming from a community organizing background, I decided to call all the representatives of the different high schools of my hometown. Right. We sat around the table and I asked them, so guys, tell me, how have you worked with politicians in the past? What have you guys done together, or what has been done for you? And well, before asking this question, the first thing that they said to me was, have we done anything wrong? So,
right. Why are you calling me in here?
Why
Am I in trouble?
Us here? Are we in trouble?
Yeah.
And this made me realize that these guys had never been, and these girls had never been listened to before. So when we were talking about politics, they were completely disillusioned. Not because, and I thought because they didn't have any luck for the future, or they didn't have any thought about their jobs, but actually they were not even thinking about their future. They had never been listened to. They've never been involved in policy making. Politicians were doing policies without involving them at all. So they were like, we don't see politicians, we don't hear from them, we just see them when they want our votes. And I think that if we want, of course we want democracy, right? We want our rights to be protected, we want our freedom, and I don't think that anybody would exchange democracy for anything in the world. Yet we have to admit that democracy, at least in places like mine, is failing generations like my generation or generations even younger. So we as politicians, as leaders, have a huge responsibility to go back into these places and make these boys, this girl, part of the solution, part of this policy-making process, listen to them and engage them, because we are talking about huge numbers. Like Italy has around 8,000 municipalities. 180 municipalities are above 50,000 people. All the rest, more than 7,800 municipalities, are really small towns where politicians can have a day-to-day engagement with their constituencies and with those kids. I think it's our job to do it, because this is the only way we can infuse hope in them and in the future of democracy.
As I listen, I'm going to think of new questions, and I'll give you a new question, Tudor, but you can answer the old question. Take it where you want. But as I was listening to Federica speaking, she mentioned online, and one thing we know about young people, whether in Europe, the United States, Africa, anywhere in the world, a larger portion of their time, attention is on the phone or a screen. And I know that you have worked in thinking about how to use these new technologies to engage people rather than isolate them. What strategies have worked for you when it comes to engaging people online? But how does that also then translate into action in the real world? Because we have an expression in the United States, hashtag activism, where somebody just tweets like, or has a sarcastic comment about something, and then kind of feels like, well, there was my political activism for the day. But it never actually translates into voting, mobilization, initiatives that bring about change. What's your sense?
Well, I would rather answer with an example. In our world, we always say that email is dead. It's difficult to reach people by email. And it's a very good solution because unlike social media, the email is targeted. You have an email address, you send an email, the person receives the email. With social media, it's much more complicated than that. And with these new networks that arise, it's hard for us to even find ways in which we can actually tap in with our messaging. But the example I'm going to give you is with a petition that was started on our website by the students in Romania. They asked for a modernization of the way in which they are evaluated. They go through the same evaluation that I went through when I went to high school, or my sister that is 10 years older than me. And it wasn't changed. And what they did is they signed a petition on our website, 400,000 of them. Almost every kid in school in Romania signed that petition. And we require an email when people sign that petition. And so they created that email in order to sign that petition, and we want to work with them together for the next steps. What happened with that petition, the first time that it was submitted to the Minister of Education, he kind of mocked them. But then they came up with follow-up tactics. And the last declaration of the minister is somewhat, I'm going to think about it, but it's already, I see them win that campaign. Even if it's going to take a little bit more time, the way in which they work together, the way in which they are creative to put pressure on decision makers, makes me have much more hope than I have in my generation, for instance. And I would not treat these kind of things as individual, things that are too individualistic. We have to work together. The students in Romania, they somehow managed to find ways in which they talked. They used the platform that last time I heard of it, it was for online gaming, people synchronizing on strategies, and they used that software. It was impressive for me to see how well they can be organized and how efficient they are. And that is the one thing that brings me a lot of hope.
So, Federica works very local, and you, on the other hand, are part of a European-wide network advocating on behalf of the Roma people. What do you see, what are the trends that you're seeing in terms of young people getting involved Europe-wide? And how do they feel about European democracy? Because one of the interesting things about democracy in Europe, I remember when I was president coming here, you had local governments, you had regional governments, you had national governments, then you had Brussels, you've got the EU, you've got the European Parliament, and so there are a bunch of different ways to access politics, but I'm wondering, does that make it more difficult or more accessible for people to want to get involved and to feel like they have a hand in who's making decisions that affect their lives?
I'm going to start with the following. The democracy has always meant the same. It has meant the voice of the people, the power of the people, the decision of the people. And what I see in my generation and their perception and feeling of democracy has two aspects. The first one is that the Roma community, in their mid-20s or even younger, they are very disappointed in democracy in general. Also in the approach of how some political leaders are responding to democracy and democratic ideals. And this has different reasons, because for so long, the Roma, in general, were excluded economically, politically, culturally, and were underrepresented. They didn't have their own representative who is coming directly from the community, who knows the issues in the community and the challenges, and who can deliver and articulate and tries to solve them. Because representatives who are non-Roma, they cannot know what is happening in the Roma community better than a Roma. So on the other hand, working for 10 years now in the community, building power in the community and showing different approach, like relationship buildings and so on, the community and the young people see a different added value. They can participate in public dialogues with politicians, with different political actors, with mayors and so on. And they see that this is an element that gives them, that gives them a value where they can contribute. So what is the narrative now in the community and amongst the youngsters? What I hear is, well, maybe we are, because we are the biggest ethnic minority in Europe with over 12 million Roma, maybe we are a key contributor to preserve democracy. And with all the painful history and survivals that we had in the past, now we are still here and we are courageous and brave to take action. And that's what democracy is about bravery and effort that will bring bigger changes.
Excellent. All those people clapping up there, many of them are working on different issues. The three of you are working on different issues. How do you think, one of the challenges for democracy in the United States is sometimes people become very narrow in the issues that they're concerned about. You know, climate change that's a very complicated issue. Criminal justice reform is very detailed, and so organizations, activists, even elected officials sometimes work narrowly. But in order to build power and to actually move the levers of democracy, it's a huge advantage if you can form coalitions across groups. And I'm wondering, how have you been thinking about in your own work or in conversations that you've been having the need to work across sectors? Or, how do you think about the relationship between working in nonprofits versus running for office? Always a difficult debate, I think. Does change come more from the inside or from the outside beating down the door? How have you been thinking about that?
We were just laughing because we were having this discussion literally 15 minutes ago.
Were you encouraging Tudor to run for something?
Run for office, yes.
He's a very handsome guy. I think he could do well.
I'm trying really hard, but it doesn't like he wants to be convinced. What I believe is that we need way more cross-sectional politics in general, but way more engagement in different sectors. Yet, there are tons of challenges. First of all, generally, as we were saying, activists do not want to run for office. And this is what I'm trying to change from the very bottom, because I believe that we have generally attached a very negative meaning to politics, while politics is the air we breathe. Politics is in every single thing we do. It's in the transportations that we take, it's in the climate, it's in the way we engage with people, it's in the way we speak, how we're educated. Politics is everything. So whenever someone tells me, oh, politics is bad, politics is corrupted, politics is full of scandals, I reply, this is what governs your life. So if this is what governs your life, do you really want to be governed by the worst people that you think are getting there? And we are electing them in democracies. So what I don't understand, and what we were discussing about, is that we talk a lot about democracy, but then, especially in countries like mine, in places like mine, we have the lowest standards for the people that then get up in the parliament and write these laws for us. So I think that if we really want to change things, we need more people that have super high moral standards and that want to change things from the grassroots to the top level to get engaged into politics and get elected. Because it's true that you can get an amazing amount of change as an activist. I was an activist before becoming a politician. I was a community organizer. And I think I still want to be an activist. I want to be an activist. I want to get out and rally for climate change, or I want to get out with my people and clean parks if we need to. But we cannot avoid thinking that politics is not part of the game. Politics is part of the game. Politics will always be part of the game. And if we don't think that we don't have to get engaged, then we will keep being governed by the people that we don't like, even though we vote for them. And then we have voters' apathy, and we have kids not going to vote, and we have people getting way and way far away from politics while this still governs our life. This has to change, and I am arguing that this needs to change from the very bottom, where people like me, politicians, can start talking face-to-face with their constituency and regaining the trust that they've lost so far because they have been governed by the wrong people, because the right one were just too scared of the bad environment that politics brings up on.
Almost convinced me, but no. I have my reasons still.
Well, I'm not going to put you on the spot today and ask you to announce your candidacy, this goes to the issues of this summit. You know, it's often easy to defend democracy in the abstract, but if you have been an activist and you've been working from the outside, sometimes it is difficult to see why change is moving slowly on the inside. And as I said in my remarks, some of that is by design. You know, as somebody who started locally and then ended up running a pretty big government, you know, a lot of the activists who worked with me would get frustrated and think somehow that, well, how come he hasn't gotten this done or that done yet? It must be because he no longer cares about us. You know, he's talking to all these, you know, rich contributors and this and that. When in fact, no, I still want exactly what you wanted, but the wheels of government are just moving very slowly because there are all these systems that are set up to block it. The reason I say that is because I think for democracy to work, you have to have both. You have to have people who are in the engine room and the deck of the ship of democracy, working to make it move in the right direction. But you also have to have people on the outside who are constantly maintaining pressure and getting people involved, because that's the engine, you know, that's the fuel that ultimately is going to get you to where you want to go. Yeah, so I'm interested in how, as I said, Tudor, you don't have to announce your candidacy,
Not yet.
but because there's an important role to play in citizen participation, activism, organization, and so far that's the role you've chosen to play. Do you feel like you can make enough of a difference in that kind, taking that approach? Particularly if maybe sometimes you see, you said like the education minister seemed like he's not listening to 400,000 students. Do you think, you know what, we should have somebody in there who does listen?
It's a big temptation for many activists to go into politics, and I admire those who do. It's not a matter of me thinking that politics is dirty and we should not touch it. No, politics is where decisions are made. My fear is that if people like me enter politics, we leave an empty spot in the civil society. And that spot in a country like Romania was difficult to fill in the first place. We are a young democracy. If all of us from the civil society turn into politics, we need to bring new people to form this new civil society. And what I noticed in my line of work is that politicians become better when we demand them to do so. So I think that in a way the civil society is like that bad medicine that tastes bad, but you still need to take it because it makes you healthy. And I like to be that medicine that tastes bad. It makes me feel better. But if I would get $1 single each time I'm invited to join politics, I would solve the funding for my organization for 10 years.
Let me start with you on this question, Salva. We talked about online organizing, but one of the things that I do think has changed even since I was in office was the amount of misinformation, the difficulty of sorting between what's true and what's false, what's journalism and what's fabrication. And I'm wondering how all of you in the work that you try to do have dealt with the misinformation problem, whether it affects your work and whether you've come up with some solutions so that you can get facts and information out to people and you don't have to spend all your time refuting things that people think that aren't true. And in some cases, politicize issues that shouldn't be political. In the United States, is I think many of you saw, COVID became somehow a political issue, getting vaccinated or wearing masks. A lot of that was driven just by misinformation that was out there. And that seems to be happening on more and more issues. I'm wondering how it's affected you and whether you've seen some solutions to help young people distinguish between what's true and false in making decisions about how to participate and what to support.
Yes, definitely. The digital space has fundamentally alerted on how people are being exposed to engage with information. And I think that the internet has enabled a lot of people to create and expand different kind of content by a large audience at marginal costs, and it's instantly and freely accessible. However, there are big concerns also in our movement about how false information and misinformation is spreading on the internet to influence decisions by some political actors or political sides. So using the social media, you can create and you can expand different kind of misinformation. And as you said, the challenge is that those kind of fake news and misinformation are making the people to have different kind of opinion, which is not necessarily relevant or truthful. And this is an issue we have also with the Roma community, a community who has been discriminated for so long, ignored. It's very easy. There is a big base to spread fake news and to make them think like that. And not necessarily they can now differentiate what is opinion and what is fact. So what we do as activists, as movements, and I mean what we can't do is we cannot, we don't have the space and tools how to regulate the internet. But what we can do is to try to counteract this kind of false news and to try to actively produce content that is relevant and spread the frequency of our own message and our own narrative.
Excellent. Federica, as elected official and activist, is that a problem that you've seen in terms of the work that you're doing? Do you find you make a proposal and somebody says, well, you know, I just saw on the internet that, you know, what you're doing is going to cause cancer, or it's going to, you know, destroy the economy or something, and then you have to spend a lot of time unwinding. Some of these.
It exactly works like this. A really simple example: the cost of energy and the cost of water rose because of the war. Yet we had a couple of newspapers saying that that we were getting paid by the taxpayer money of this increase in water and energy. So obviously it's false, and obviously it should be even easy to think about it because it's the war. It's like something way above us. Yet what comes out there, and what I notice is that it's even easier for people to get up this false news and this false noise. It's scary. So, and it's not just about that. It's about rumors that get out. It's about people talking to people. So in a very small town, you have a huge amount of rumors coming out. And our question was how do we counteract against it? What do we do? So, of course, you can work online, but in such a small town, and again, Italy is full, and I guess also Europe, it's full of such small places, you can have a real confrontation with your constituencies. So we've started having town halls, open-air town halls now that it's summer and COVID is not such a big risk, especially outside. And we've asked people to join us in sharing with us their fears, their questions, what they want, how can we answer to their problems. And first time, nobody asked questions. It was really weird. But then...
Everybody just sat there for half an hour?
Yeah, exactly. So we started talking about our policies. But then on our policies, they started asking questions. And many of them were really good questions. We see a lot of anger on Facebook, a lot of anger on social media. And when you go on real life, first of all, this anger is not that bad. But second, it has a motive. It has a reason. And when you meet your people and you can ask them, you can listen to them, you actually know what those reasons are, and you can give them answers. And not only I think we should give them answers, I think we should include them in the decision-making process and the implementations of the policies that we bring about. So to counteract this fake news environment in this small town, I guess that the real solution is coming back on the ground, grassroots, meeting with people, answering their questions, involving them, and making them part of the change that we want to see around.
Excellent. So, we're coming to the end of our session here, and I want to give you a two-part question. If you ever decide to run for office, this is how reporters get around. They're only supposed to get one question. Sir, I have a 5-part question, and then they'll tick them off. So I'm going to use the trick they taught me. And you can answer both, either one, or just don't answer, which is also a strategy that I taught them, and talk about what I want to talk about. I opened with my remarks, and obviously an enormous amount of time has been spent at this summit talking about the tragedy of what's happening in Ukraine. And I'm wondering how you think this has affected you, your generation, to witness this kind of crisis in the heart of Europe in a way that harkens back to your grandparents' generation. It's been a long time since we saw that much violence, and now we can witness it in real time, and displacement. So I'm curious, how's it impacted you and your friends? How do you talk about it? And does it encourage you to see the response and make you more committed to the public work that you're doing? So that's one question. Part two, because we're running out of time, is what are the things that do inspire you and keep you going? Because as I think, whether it's you, Frederica, or Tudor, but I know you all feel it, sometimes the work gets lonely. And sometimes democracy is discouraging. What is it that has kept that optimism and hope going even when you confront setbacks and where you feel like democracy is not working? So why don't we start down with you?
Well, I think that the recent context and situation has affected generally the youth, and in particular the Roma community, in many aspects and many ways, psychologically, financially, and there is a lot of frustration. And as a matter of fact, in Ukraine, there are a lot of Roma, there is a big Roma community who has also been put aside and discriminated for so long. But yet again, the Roma who are there are fighting for Ukraine, and they are fighting for freedom. So I hope the war ends as soon as possible, and I hope that after the war, Roma won't be forgotten. What really inspires me, because for so long, the narrative towards us was negative. Much of stigma, negative perception, and big part of the Roma community accepted that. But going in the community, talking to people, working with people, and seeing how much of a big potential the Roma are and how much of a big capacity we have is what really inspires me and drives me. And this is something that I felt from the very beginning of my activism 10 years ago, and I still feel it whenever I go to the community. And I think that this is the new generation of a driving change, and a community who can preserve democracy and who can be part of preserving democracy in the next period. And I really hope that European stakeholders, institutions, will have more openness towards Roma and more inclusiveness in particular.
When you ask me about how do I see democracy now, it made me realize that in my family, I'm the first generation that lived the young years in peace and democracy. My parents, they lived theirs in the Cold War. My grandparents fought in World War II. My great-grandparents fought in World War I. And so I am the first one, basically, that lived to see democracy. Now, I'm not that young. I have gray hair. I still can hide it underneath the other parts. I still remember the days in Romania when we were a dictatorship. I was very young, but there are things that still are very strong memories. The queues to go and buy food, the heaters that were cold in the winter. I do not want to go back to that. And for many years I thought that, for instance, war is something that is unthinkable. And after 2014, it became obvious that war is again a thing in Europe. And it scares me. That's the hard reality. But that's when we get paralyzed with fear, that's when they win. No? Fear is not really an option for us, because I do not want to go back to the days when Romania was a dictatorship. I do not want to see those atrocities happen again. So I will fight with everything I have to keep the democracy going and make sure that this system, as imperfect as it is, keeps on going, because it is the only thing that allows me to be in places like this, to meet the amazing leaders that I met in the last few days. And meeting you is something that would have been unthinkable for my parents' generation. So we have to defend this because what would come next is unimaginable.
Madam Mayor, you get the last word here.
When it comes to Ukraine, I still remember the day of the war, and I remember calling my friends, and I mean, we were all shocked. And it was something that lasted for a while. Like, we had the crunch in the stomach, we couldn't think about what was happening, we couldn't think about the fact that that our borders, like Ukraine, which we consider Europe, were at war. And we're for like a really good, like a really big European generation. So we felt extremely attacked, sad, lost somehow. But on the other hand, it was also sort of a wake-up call, a reminder that in Italy, at least in my town, in my region, we are still lucky enough to be able to keep working on a democracy that it's not working as we would like it to be. It's not being as we would like it to be. So that brings me to the point of what is it that passionates me and moves me, especially when you live in a town where in front of you, you don't have just your political opponent, but probably the woman who stole your boyfriend when you were 15 years old and you still haven't forgotten. So it gets...
That's a good point. I mean, that's like, if it's, that makes it a little more personal.
Exactly.
No, I wasn't pointing. She's not here. I was pretending that I was pointing.
But it gets harder because you want to do stuff and you know that you can't move on because probably there's something personal behind it. So how do you do? And this is also what gave me hope. I'll tell you like a short story. I have been working with this woman, not working, I would have loved to work with this woman, but since I got elected, she's been opposing every single thing that I tried to propose. From the football court for the kids, from a youth center, with no reason. I could understand why. So one day, I went into the local high school to talk to the youth of the local high school, and I was talking to them about the fact that my mom wanted me to become a lawyer, my dad wanted me to become a consultant. I tried both, I hated them both, and then I got into politics, which was my dream. And I told these kids that we live in a society that doesn't give us the space to understand who we are, what we love and what we want to do. So it's their job and our job as politicians to support them in finding the space and allowing them to become what they want. Great speech, went back home, slept on it. Morning after, I received a call. It was this woman, and she said, look, my daughter was in the stage and was listening to you, and she filmed you, and she sent me the recording. And I wanted to thank you because my story is your story, with the difference that I didn't have the courage that you had to follow my own dreams. And having you out there talking to my daughter about the fact that you did, gave my daughter the confidence to come to me and say that she wanted to become an architect. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to work with you on this youth center.
That's great.
Knowing that beyond being politicians, we are human beings that share stories, and at the end of the day, we all want this world to be a better place, is what gives me hope, because I see every single day that we can overcome our differences, we can build bridges, we can close the gap between the politicians, the high school girls that had a fight over a boyfriend, and we can unite on what really matters for us, and this gives me a lot of hope.
Good. Well, the three of you give me hope. The young people who are working with us at the foundation are giving us hope. For those of you who are already parts of organizations working on democratic issues, either here or on other continents, I cannot tell you enough that we have to invest in this cohort if we are going to succeed. Because every time I have a chance to have conversations, the kind of idealism and innovation and imagination and courage that you've heard from these three, they're out there. And they need to be heard, and need to be empowered because they're going to be the ones who take us where we need to go. All right? Please give them a big round of applause. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.